What if the most famous journey into the afterlife was not a religious pilgrimage, but a coded initiation into forbidden knowledge? The Times Divine Comedy Times begins not with a prayer, but with a death. Midway upon the journey of our life, I found myself within a forest dark, for the straightforward pathway had been lost. This is not a metaphor. This is a ritual descent. Dante is 35 years old, the midpoint of the biblically allotted 70 years. He has reached the critical age, the turning point where the soul either awakens or is lost forever. The dark forest is the state of spiritual confusion, the seeker's crisis when the comfortable illusions of doctrine no longer hold. He is blocked by three beasts: the leopard of fraud, the lion of violence, and the insatiable she-wolf of incontinence. They are not external monsters. They are the internalized corruptions of a society and of a soul that has lost its way. At his moment of deepest despair, a figure appears. Virgil. We are told he represents human reason, a comforting lie for the masses. The truth is far more unsettling. Virgil is an emissary from a hidden order, the Times Fedeli d'amore asterisk, the faithful of love. He does not offer salvation. He offers a path downward, into the heart of darkness itself. The true purpose of this journey was never to reach paradise. It was to acquire the forbidden knowledge of what lies beneath. To understand the terrifying genius of Dante, we must first see hell not as a place of punishment, but as a precise spiritual lattice. The 9 circles are not arbitrary. They are a deliberate inversion of the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. In the Kabbalah, the Tree of Life depicts the 10 emanations, or Sephiroth, through which the infinite divine manifests creation. It is a map of ascent, a path of return to the divine source. Dante's Inferno is its dark twin, the Tree of Death, known in esoteric traditions as the Qliphoth. These are the hollow shells, the impure vessels that shattered during the primordial breaking. The Times Shevarat Hakalim asterisk. Each circle of hell corresponds to a specific Sapphira, but in its most corrupted, Qliphotic state. The descent is a systematic unraveling. It begins in limbo, the first circle, which mirrors the highest Sapphira, Keter, the crown. But here, Keter is stripped of its divine connection. It is pure potential without purpose, the virtue of the unbaptized, forever separated from God's grace. This is the lightest sin, a passive separation. As we descend, we move through the spheres of the soul's corruption. The second circle, lust, corresponds to chokhmah, the male principle of raw wisdom, now twisted into addictive, tempestuous emotion. The third, gluttony, is bina, the female principle of understanding, corrupted into a mire of sensory indulgence. The descent continues through the lower spheres, each circle mirroring a Sapphira's fall, until we reach the 9th circle, treachery. This is the Qliphotic counterpart to Malkut, the kingdom, the Sephira that represents the physical world and divine presence within it. In its fallen state, Malkut becomes absolute separation, a frozen kingdom of pure isolation. Here, at the very center of this inverted tree, we find Satan. He is not a ruler. He is a prisoner, trapped in the ice of Cocytus. He is the ultimate symbol of stagnation, the divine force of rebellion, frozen solid, eternally chewing on the ultimate betrayers. This is the geometry of damnation, a perfect, inverted spiritual architecture, a map of the soul's potential for absolute separation from the divine source. Before this descent can begin, Dante and Virgil must pass through the gate. Its inscription is one of the most famous and misunderstood passages in all of literature. Through me the way into the suffering city. Through me the way to the lost people. Abandon all hope, you who enter here. This is not a threat from a vengeful God. It is an initiatory warning. a declaration of a created reality. Hell was not created by divine love, but by divine justice, a necessary consequence of primal love. The gate declares, "Justice moved my high maker, divine power made me, wisdom supreme, and primal love." This is the chilling truth. Hell is a divinely engineered system, a spiritual law as immutable as gravity. Just inside the gate, Dante encounters the souls of the neutral angels, those who took no side in the war in heaven. They are chased by wasps and stung by hornets, their blood and tears feeding the worms at their feet. These are the cosmic bureaucrats, the souls who refuse to choose, who lived without infamy or praise. They are rejected by both heaven and hell because their sin is the absence of commitment, a void where a soul should be. They enforce a terrifying divine law that operates beyond simple concepts of good and evil. It is a law of consequence. This leads us to the first circle, Limbo, and its profound esoteric mystery. Here reside the virtuous, unbaptized great poets like Homer and Horace, philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, and noble pagans like Saladin. They live in a castle of 7 gates, surrounded by a green meadow, but they are forever separated from the divine presence, sighing without torment. The Church would have you see this as a theological flaw, a problem of salvation history. The esoteric truth is darker. Limbo reveals that divine law is not about morality, but about alignment. These souls possessed natural virtue, but they lacked the specific initiation, the baptismal seal that aligns one with the Christian current. Their fate is not one of punishment, but of perfect, eternal deprivation. It is the ultimate warning that knowledge and virtue alone, without the correct spiritual alignment, lead to a graceful but absolute separation from the ultimate reality. This is the first lesson of the initiate. The system is precise, and its laws are unforgiving. The 3 beasts that block Dante's path are not random obstacles. They are a precise, alchemical diagnosis of the soul's corruption, mirrored perfectly in the political strife tearing Florence apart. The leopard of fraud represents the deceptive, self-serving politics that had infected his city. The lion of violence is the raw, tyrannical force that such fraud inevitably births. But it is the she-wolf that is the most immediate and terrifying threat. She is described as haunted by hunger, a lean and craving beast. Her insatiable appetite represents the corrupting nature of material power, the incontinence that drives men to hoard wealth and territory without ever being satisfied. This is the sin that Dante himself felt most acutely, the temptation of worldly ambition. Dante's exile from Florence was not a tragedy. It was the necessary catalyst for his spiritual awakening. It was the she-wolf's bite that forced him out of the comfortable forest of ordinary life and onto this hidden path. The political struggles between the Guelphs and Ghibellines, the black and white factions, were not just earthly conflicts. They were the external reflection of the internal war within the soul, between spiritual aspiration and temporal desire. To be cast out from the city, from all he knew, was to be stripped of every earthly identity. This is the first, brutal step of any true initiation, the death of the old self. The political world, with all its treachery and violence, became the mirror in which Dante saw the true state of his own soul. The she-wolf's hunger is the engine of the material world, and one must be devoured by it or learn to see through its illusion to begin the real work. The descent into the upper circles of hell is a descent into the foundational corruptions of the human spirit. These are not the calculated evils of later circles, but the raw, passionate failures that twist the soul away from its divine nature. In the second circle, the circle of lust, Dante encounters Francesca da Rimini and her lover, Paolo. They are trapped in an eternal tempest, swept helplessly by a whirlwind. This is the addiction to emotion, the surrender to passion without the guiding light of reason. Francesca's famous line, "Love led us to one death," is a profound deception. It was not love, but a selfish, consuming passion that mistook desire for divinity. Their punishment is not fire, but air, the element of the mind, now chaotic and uncontrollable. They are forever trapped in the storm of their own feelings, a warning that emotion untethered from higher purpose becomes its own prison. Deeper still, in the third circle, lies the mire of gluttony. Here, in a ceaseless, foul rain, the gluttonous lie, submerged in a slush of their own making. Chiaco, a Florentine known only as the Hog, rises from the muck to deliver a prophecy of his city's future strife. This is the sin of sensory indulgence, of drowning the spirit in the physical. The punishment is a perfect reflection. They who made their world only about consumption are now consumed by the elements, unable to rise. But Chiaco's prophecy is the key. Even in this degraded state, knowledge of the future is accessible. This circle corresponds to Binah, the Sephira of understanding, and its Qliphotic corruption reveals that when understanding is applied only to the material, it leads to a prophetic but utterly hopeless clarity. One can see the future, but is powerless to change it, mired in the consequences of one's own indulgence. The fourth circle presents a stark, mechanical vision of futility. Here, the avaricious and the prodigal, the hoarders and the wasters, push great weights against each other in a semicircle. When they clash, they scream, "Why do you hoard? And why do you squander?" before turning back to their endless, futile labor. This is the sin of material obsession in its dualistic failure. Both groups are obsessed with wealth, merely expressing it differently. Their punishment is the ultimate symbol of materialism, a weight that goes nowhere. They are trapped in a system of their own creation, where the pursuit of matter leads only to a collision with its opposite, with no progress, no meaning, only eternal, cyclical strife. It is the hell of an economic system devoid of spirit. Finally, in the fifth circle, we reach the Stygian marsh, the domain of wrath and sullenness. On the surface, the wrathful attack each other in the muddy waters. Beneath the surface, the sullen those who harbored a slow, bitter anger gurgle in the black sludge, their lament forming bubbles on the surface. We were sullen in the sweet air that the sun makes glad. They groan, and we bore the smoke of sullenness in our hearts. This is the toxicity of unresolved anger, both active and passive. The active wrath creates chaos, while the passive sullenness, the silent resentment, is a deeper, more insidious poison that corrupts the soul from within. These lighter sins of the upper circles are not minor. They are the foundational corruptions. Lust, gluttony, avarice, and wrath are the raw energies of the soul that, when misdirected and untransformed, create the very ground from which the more conscious evils of the lower hell can grow. They are the cracks in the foundation that lead to the total collapse of the spiritual edifice. We now descend past the wall of Dis into the sixth circle, and the atmosphere shifts from passionate failure to intellectual rebellion. Here, in a plain of burning tombs, lie the heretics. Their sin is not one of passion or greed, but of the mind. They are those who denied the soul's eternity. Epicurus, who taught that the soul dies with the body, lies here with his followers. Their punishment is exquisitely fitting. Sealed in fiery sarcophagi, they who claimed everything ended with death are now eternally conscious within a tomb, their bodies the very matter they deified, becoming their eternal prison. The fire is not an external torment, it is the heat of their own defiant intellect, turned inward upon itself. Here, Dante encounters Farinata degli Uberti, a proud Florentine Ghibelline leader who rises from his tomb as if he held all hell in great contempt. This is not a scene of torment, but a dialogue between two exiles, a moment of tragic nobility. Farinata's heresy was political as much as theological. His pride was in his city and his faction, a loyalty that superseded even church doctrine. He represents the rupture between spiritual truth and earthly dogma, the moment when human reason, in its pride, declares itself the final arbiter of reality. The burning tombs are not just punishment, they are a symbol of a covenant broken. Heresy, in its deepest esoteric sense, is not simply error. It is the courage or the arrogance to see beyond established doctrine, to posit a different reality. The risk is absolute. If you are wrong, you are sealed forever in the coffin of your own ideology, burning with the certainty that you alone saw the truth. The descent into the seventh circle marks a critical transition. We move from sins of weakness to sins of will, from the incontinence of the upper hell to the calculated malice of the lower. This circle, guarded by the Minotaur, is reserved for the violent, and its structure is a masterpiece of esoteric alchemy, divided into 3 concentric rings, each representing a different facet of destructive force. The outermost ring is a river of boiling blood, the Phlegethon. Here, those who committed violence against others, tyrants, warmongers, murderers, are immersed to a depth corresponding to their cruelty. Alexander the Great, Dionysius of Syracuse, and Attila the Hun boil in the scarlet current, shot by centaurs if they dare rise above their allotted level. This is violence externalized, the raw will to power expressed against one's fellow man. The alchemical process here is one of coagulation. The lifeblood they spilled now becomes the very element of their punishment, a viscous, heated substance that holds them in a state of perpetual, aggressive stagnation. Deeper within lies the wood of the suicides. This is violence turned inward. Those who destroyed their own bodies are denied a human form. Their souls are thrown onto a barren plain, where they grow as gnarled, thorny trees. Harpies, creatures with the faces of women and the bodies of birds, nest in their branches, feeding on their leaves, causing them eternal pain. When Dante breaks a twig from one such tree, it bleeds and speaks. It is the soul of Pier della Vigna, who took his own life after falling from political favor. His punishment is the ultimate alchemical inversion. Having rejected the vessel of the body, they are now trapped within the vegetable kingdom, a lower form of life, sensitive to every touch, but unable to move or speak unless violated. Theirs is a silence, broken only by pain, a perfect symbol of the self-hatred that consumes from within. At the very center of this circle, on a vast plain of burning sand, lie those who committed violence against God and nature. The blasphemers, the usurers, and the sodomites. A perpetual flame rains down upon them. The blasphemers, who cursed God directly, lie supine, their faces turned upward to receive the full force of the fire. The sodomites, who violated natural law, run endlessly in troops under the shower of flame. The usurers, who violated art, the offspring of nature, by making money breed unnaturally, sit huddled on the sand. This ring represents the most profound spiritual degradation, an attack on the very source of creation itself. The alchemy here is calcination, a burning away of all form until only a barren, sterile essence remains. Here, Dante has one of his most poignant encounters. Brunetto Latini, his former teacher and a respected scholar, now among the sodomites. Brunetto runs with the others, but he stops to speak with Dante, offering paternal pride and prophetic warnings about Dante's future. This moment is layered with tragic nobility. It is the inversion of mentorship. the teacher is now condemned, while the student walks the path of salvation. Brunetto's fate underscores a terrifying truth. Even intellect, even cultural contribution, cannot save a soul that has fundamentally violated the divine order. The three rings of the seventh circle present a complete alchemy of violence, against others, against the self, and against the divine source. Each is a step deeper into the willful perversion of the life force, a conscious turning away from creation and toward pure destruction. Now, we cross the final boundary into the realm of conscious, calculated evil. The descent into the Malebolge is a descent into a different order of damnation. This is the eighth circle of hell, a vast, funnel-shaped fortress of stone, ringed by 10 concentric ditches. Here, the sins are no longer of passion or even of brute violence, but of fraud. This is evil with a face, a plan, a smile. The word Malebolge itself means evil pouches or evil ditches, and each one is a specific perversion of human connection and divine order. The architecture is deliberate. A series of stone bridges cross the ditches, allowing Dante and Virgil to observe each level of this intricate machine of deception. The first ditch holds the panderers and seducers, driven forever by whipping demons. They who used words and charm to manipulate the desires of others are now themselves driven by an external force, stripped of all autonomy. In the second ditch, the flatterers wallow in a river of human excrement, a perfect reflection of the foulness that poured from their mouths. The third ditch is for the simoniacs, those who sold ecclesiastical favors. They are planted headfirst in baptismal font-like holes, with flames licking at the soles of their feet. Their punishment is an inversion of Pentecost, where the Holy Spirit descended as flame. Their punishment ascends as fire from their inverted position. The fourth ditch holds the sorcerers and diviners, their heads twisted backwards so they can only see behind them. They who attempted to see the future, to twist fate to their will, are now condemned to walk eternally looking backward, forever blind to what lies ahead. In the fifth ditch, the barrators, the corrupt politicians, are plunged into a lake of boiling pitch by demons with grappling hooks. Their punishment mirrors their corrupt dealings, sticky, hidden, and inescapable. The sixth ditch presents the hypocrites, forced to wear brilliantly gilded lead cloaks that weigh them down endlessly. Their outward show of piety is now their eternal burden. The seventh ditch holds the thieves, tormented by a plague of reptiles. They are bitten by snakes, their bodies transforming, bursting into flames, and reforming only to be attacked again. This is the punishment for those who stole the property and identity of others. They now have no stable form of their own. In the eighth ditch, the false counselors are encased within individual flames. Here, Dante encounters the soul of Ulysses, trapped in a twin flame with Diomedes. Ulysses represents the ultimate tragedy of knowledge without wisdom. He recounts his final voyage, how he spurred his men to sail beyond the pillars of Hercules, the known limits of the world, seeking virtue and knowledge. His ship was wrecked by a divine whirlwind. Ulysses is punished not for his Trojan horse deception, but for using his great intellect to lead others beyond the divinely ordained boundaries, for making knowledge itself a god. The ninth ditch is for the sowers of discord. A demon with a sword mutilates them, carving them apart, only for their wounds to heal so the process can repeat. They who sowed division in families, religions, and cities are now eternally divided in their own bodies. Finally, the 10th ditch holds the falsifiers, alchemists, counterfeiters, impostors. They are afflicted with every manner of disease, raging thirst, scaly skin, dropsy. They who corrupted the essence of things, metal, identity, truth, are now themselves corrupted, their very beings a lie of sickness and decay. The grotesque, inventive punishments of the Malebolge are not arbitrary cruelty. They are precise, symbolic codes. Each punishment is a physical manifestation of the fraudster's own twisted psyche, the inner reality of their sin made externally visible for eternity. The entire structure functions as a vast, spiritual mechanism designed to process souls who consciously chose to pervert the bonds of trust that hold reality together. To walk the bridges of the Malebolge is to witness the complete catalogue of corrupted relationship, a descent through the 10 layers of a lie. Before Dante and Virgil can descend into the final circle, they must pass through a realm that bridges the human and the demonic. Here, standing as silent guardians at the edge of the abyss, are the giants. These are not the mythical creatures of fairy tales. They are primordial archetypes from a world before the Bible, figures of titanic pride whose rebellion against the gods echoes the very fall of Lucifer. They are embedded in the earth up to their waists, their immense scale a chilling reminder of a time when the boundary between humanity and divinity was dangerously thin. The first is Nimrod, the legendary king who, according to Genesis, ordered the construction of the Tower of Babel. He babbles incoherently, speaking a language no one can understand, a perfect punishment for the pride that sought to build a tower to heaven and challenge God's authority. His confusion is the eternal state of a unified will shattered into 1,000 fragments. Next is Ephialtes, who, with his brother Otis, attempted to storm Mount Olympus by piling mountain upon mountain. He is bound in chains, a symbol of the raw, chaotic force of rebellion finally subdued. His rage is so immense that he shakes with fury at the sight of the travelers, yet he is powerless to act. Finally, they encounter Antaeus, whose upper body remains free. He was a giant who remained invincible as long as he touched the earth. His mother, Gaia. It is Antaeus who lowers Dante and Virgil down into the final pit, the Cocytus. This physical descent on the body of a giant is profoundly symbolic. It represents the initiate's passage from the realm of human-scale sin into the cosmic, frozen heart of absolute betrayal. The giants are not punished in the ditches of the Malebolge because their sin transcends the personal. Their rebellion was against the cosmic order itself, an attempt to dethrone the gods. Their placement as guardians signifies that the final descent is into a territory ruled by principles older than Christianity, by archetypes of pride so vast they form the very architecture of the underworld. They are the last warning that what lies below is not merely human evil, but a fundamental rupture in the fabric of reality. And so we arrive at the end of the journey, the 9th circle, the frozen lake of Cocytus. Here, at the absolute center of hell, at the point furthest from the warm light of God, we find not a throne, but a prison. Here lies Satan, the fallen Lucifer, trapped not in fire, but in ice up to his chest. The air is still, the wind created by his beating wings only serving to freeze the lake tighter around him. This is the ultimate Qliphothic state, the complete separation from the divine source, the absolute stagnation of the soul. His form is a grotesque perversion of the Holy Trinity. He has 3 faces, one red, one yellow, and one black, each mouth chewing eternally on a traitor. In the red face, it is Judas Iscariot, the betrayer of Christ, the ultimate spiritual treason. In the other 2 mouths are Brutus and Cassius, the betrayers of Julius Caesar. This is the esoteric key. The betrayal is not just personal, it is a betrayal of both spiritual and temporal authority. Judas betrayed the founder of the spiritual kingdom. Brutus and Cassius betrayed the founder of what Dante saw as the ideal temporal empire. Satan, the being who rebelled against divine authority, now eternally consumes those who replicated his primary sin on earth. He is not a ruler of hell, he is its ultimate inmate, the embodiment of the betrayal of love, the primal love that created the universe. The river Cocytus, the river of lamentation, is frozen solid here. These are the frozen tears of betrayal, the grief and remorse that have turned cold and static, unable to flow or purify. This is the final inversion. In the divine realm, love is a flowing, creative force. Here, at the nadir, love's absence has created absolute cold, a perfect stasis. To escape this frozen core, Dante and Virgil must perform the ultimate symbolic act. They climb down Satan's shaggy body, gripping his icy hairs as ladder rungs. When they reach his groin, the center of gravity, the universe itself inverts. They pass through this point and find themselves climbing upward, emerging to see the stars again. This is the final, terrifying revelation. The way out of hell is not away from Satan, but through him. One must confront the absolute principle of rebellion and separation, descend to its very core, and pass through the inversion point to begin the ascent. The journey through hell was not about avoiding evil, but about integrating the knowledge of its absolute nature. Dante did not simply observe Satan. He used his frozen body as a ladder. This is the most dangerous secret the occultist encoded, that the path to enlightenment requires a conscious, guided descent into the very heart of darkness. But Dante's code runs deeper than allegory. The entire Times Comedy Times is structured as a vast, magical sigil, its power encoded in numbers and geometric patterns. The number 3 is the poem's foundational rhythm. The work is divided into 3 canticles: Times Inferno, Purgatorio, Paradiso. Each canticle contains 33 cantos, with an additional introductory canto for the Times Inferno, bringing the total to 100. This structure of terza rima, the 3-line interlocking rhyme scheme, ABA, BCB, CDC, creates a relentless, spiraling momentum, a verbal echo of the Trinity itself. But for the initiate, the Trinity is not just a theological concept, it is a formula of dynamic stability, a pattern that underpins all of creation. Dante's use of 3 is an act of sympathetic magic, aligning the very structure of his poem with the fundamental architecture of the cosmos. Then there is the number 9. Hell has 9 circles. Purgatory is a mountain with 9 terraces. Paradise is composed of 9 celestial spheres, culminating in the Empyrean. 9 is 3 squared, the number of completion and culmination. In the Kabbalah, there are 9 spheres below Keter, the crown. Dante's 9 circles of hell are the inversion of this, the complete descent into the Qliphothic shells. The journey through these 9s is a complete cycle of descent and ascent, a full revolution through the spiritual cosmos. The number 100, the total number of cantos, symbolizes perfection and totality, 10 times 10, the complete fulfillment of the divine order. This numerical lattice is not decorative, it is functional. It is the hidden scaffolding that gives the poem its occult potency, turning it from a story into a working diagram of the soul's potential. Beyond the grand numbers lie the microcodes. Scholars have found hidden acrostics within the verses, geometric patterns formed by the initial letters of certain lines. The poem is littered with precise astronomical references, placing the journey at a specific celestial alignment in the spring of 1300. This date is not random. It was believed to be a time of great spiritual potential, a jubilee year. By anchoring his narrative in a real, astrologically significant moment, Dante blurs the line between fiction and ritual. He is not merely describing a journey, he is performing one, using the poem as a vehicle to navigate the very spiritual realms he maps. The Times Divine Comedy asterisk, in its entirety, is a large-scale magical operation, a spell written in plain sight, its power accessible only to those who understand the language of its symbols. This leads to the inevitable question: who was Dante truly serving? The evidence points strongly to his involvement in a secret mystical society known as the Times Fedeli d'Amore, Times the Faithful of Love. This was not a formal institution, but a loose network of poets, intellectuals, and initiates who used the vernacular language of romantic love as a coded vehicle for esoteric wisdom. Their lady was not an earthly woman, but divine wisdom, Sophia. Their love was the soul's yearning for reunion with the divine. Dante's treatment of Beatrice is the key. In the Times Vita Nuova Times and later in the Times Comedy asterisk, she undergoes a profound transformation. She begins as a mortal woman he admires, but by the end, she is his guide through paradise, a radiant embodiment of theology and revelation. She is the ultimate symbol of the Times Fedeli d'Amore asterisk, the feminine principle of divine wisdom that leads the initiate to God. The coded language of this group is everywhere in the Times Comedy asterisk. The theme of exile, so central to Dante's biography, was a core tenet of the Fedeli. The true initiate is always an exile in the worldly city, his true citizenship belonging to the heavenly realm. The dark forest of error, the three beasts, the journey guided by reason, Virgil, toward love, Beatrice. These are all motifs that align perfectly with the Fedeli's initiatory path. They believed that true knowledge could not be openly shared in a hostile world. It had to be concealed within art, protected by layers of symbolism that would be meaningless to the uninitiated, but luminous to those with the eyes to see. This explains the Times Comedy asterisk greatest paradox. It is a public masterpiece with a hidden, initiatory purpose. It satisfied the orthodox piety of the Church while simultaneously transmitting a radical, esoteric system of knowledge. Dante walks this razor's edge with terrifying precision. He presents a vision that conforms to Catholic doctrine on the surface, but whose underlying structure, the Qliphotic map of hell, the alchemical ascent of purgatory, the Neoplatonic emanation of paradise, is drawn from Hermetic, Kabbalistic, and Gnostic traditions that the Church would have condemned as heresy. He was not merely a poet, he was a hierophant, a revealer of sacred mysteries, using the greatest poem ever written in the Italian language as his vehicle. The Times Divine Comedy Times is his ultimate act of transmission, a public text that contains a secret key, ensuring that the forbidden knowledge of the soul's journey would survive, hidden in plain sight for centuries. Dante did not invent this map from nothing. He was a conduit, a synthesizer of ancient streams of forbidden knowledge flowing into the medieval world. His guide, Virgil, is the first clue. By choosing a pre-Christian Roman poet, Dante signals that the true path of wisdom predates the Church. Virgil represents the Times Aeneid asterisk own journey to the underworld, but also the broader current of classical mysticism and Platonic philosophy that the Church had suppressed but never eradicated. More startling are the whispers of Islamic influence. During Dante's lifetime, the works of the Andalusian mystic Ibn Arabi were circulating among learned circles. Ibn Arabi's concept of the Times Mirage asterisk, the Prophet Muhammad's celestial ascent, bears a striking architectural resemblance to Dante's journey through the spheres of paradise. The idea of a guided tour of the afterlife, with its precise levels and spiritual states, may well be a transmission from Sufi mysticism, filtered through the esoteric networks of the Mediterranean. This points to a deeper, Gnostic undercurrent. The Gnostic belief in a flawed material world created by a blind demiurge, and the soul's need for special knowledge or time's gnosis asterisk to escape, resonates throughout the Times comedy asterisk. Hell is the ultimate demiurgic creation, a perfectly engineered prison based on divine law, not love. The entire system has a cold, mechanical quality that feels more Gnostic than warmly orthodox. Dante's work is a grand synthesis, weaving together the classical, the Islamic, and the Gnostic into a Christian framework, not to affirm church doctrine, but to build a more complete and terrifyingly precise model of reality. And this knowledge did not die with Dante. His esoteric interpretation survived underground, passed like a sacred flame through occult circles for centuries. The Renaissance Magi, figures like Marsilio Ficino and Pico della Mirandola, saw in Dante a kindred spirit, a poet who understood the hidden harmonies of the universe. Later, the Rosicrucians and European mystics pored over the Times, comedy Times, as an initiatory text. In the 19th and 20th centuries, occultists like Eliphas Levi and members of the Golden Dawn explicitly linked Dante's 9 circles to the Qliphoth of the Kabbalah. They recognized the poem for what it is, a complete path of spiritual ascent and descent, a manual for navigating the inner planes of consciousness. But this transmission carries a grave warning, one encoded in the fate of those who misused knowledge in hell itself. The sorcerers have their heads twisted backwards. Ulysses is wrecked for sailing beyond ordained limits. The risks of accessing this knowledge without proper guidance, without the necessary moral and spiritual preparation, are catastrophic. To read the Times, comedy Times, as a mere map is to invite the same fate as the damned, to be trapped in a symbolic understanding without achieving the transformative experience. The poem is not a tourist guide to the afterlife. It is a dangerous tool that requires a guide, a Virgil or a Beatrice, to navigate safely. The forbidden transmission is not just about receiving the information, but about being prepared to bear its weight. This leads to the final, unsettling revelation. This knowledge was hidden for a reason. The societal danger of revealing the precise mechanics of the soul's journey is immense. What would happen to the social order if everyone understood that damnation is not a punishment from a vengeful God, but the inevitable consequence of spiritual misalignment? That hell is a system as logical as mathematics? The Church's power rested on a simpler, more emotional framework of sin, confession, and redemption. Dante's map reduces this to a cold, architectural diagram. It risks turning the profound mystery of salvation into an engineering problem, stripping it of the fear and awe that keep the masses in check. This is not about elitism, but about protection. There are truths that can shatter a mind not ready to receive them. To comprehend the Qliphotic inversion of the divine, to see Satan not as a monster, but as a frozen principle of separation, is to confront a reality so vast and impersonal that it can annihilate a fragile sense of self. The uninitiated, those who have not undergone the symbolic death and rebirth of the journey, would be crushed by the sheer scale of the architecture Dante unveils. The knowledge was hidden to protect the unprepared from a vision that could irrevocably break their understanding of the world and their place within it. Therefore, the responsibility that comes with mapping heaven and hell is absolute. Dante accepted this burden. He encoded his map in a public poem, knowing that its deepest layers would only be accessible to those who had already begun the inner journey. He created a permanent legacy, the most complete esoteric map of the afterlife ever created, a work that functions simultaneously as a literary masterpiece, a theological treatise, and an occult grimoire. He trusted that the keys would find their way to the right hands across time. His legacy is this choice: to see the world as doctrine, or to see it as he did, as a vast, terrifying symbol waiting to be decoded by those brave enough to look into the abyss. Dante's work stands as a permanent gateway to forbidden realms, a testament to the terrifying knowledge he dared to encode. He presents every reader with a profound choice: to see the world as a set of comforting doctrines or to confront it as a vast, terrifying symbol. The true meaning of terrifying here is not fear, but the awe that comes from staring into the architecture of reality itself. His legacy is not a poem, but a key that unlocks the map of the soul's potential for both absolute separation and divine union. He remains the most terrifying occultist because he succeeded where others failed. He hid the deepest secrets in the most public of texts, ensuring their survival for those with eyes to see. The choice he offers is eternal: